You don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. That's why I'm saying if you want to be a true investor, you need to consider everything that comes across your desk and pull the trigger on a deal. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about pulling a trigger on everything. I'm talking about pulling a trigger on a deal. The way that I would approach if I had to do this all over again, there's a couple things that I would do. Number one.
In today's market.
Yeah. Irrelevant, actually, it's irrelevant, to be honest with you, it's irrelevant what kind of market we're in. Mm-hmm. But if this was today and I had to start over again, what I would do is I would work as much as I could.
Yeah.
I would work as much as I could. I would try to increase the amount of income that I would be able to produce for myself in terms of either providing more value, working overtime, going above and beyond, like whatever. I'd try to figure out how I could get as much value and raise, I like to use this term, like raise as much capital as I could on a per hour basis as I would possibly be able to do. If that means working overtime, I would work overtime. If that means, increasing my value through increasing my skill or improving my skill set, then I do that. Like whatever, I would do as much, working multiple jobs. I would do the exact same thing that I did back in the day that I would do now, right? Then I'd buy my own house. I would buy my house, a house to live in. Mm-hmm. Why would I do that? Because I would house hack. I'd buy that house. I'd make sure that it was some sort of fixer-upper so that I would be able to, add value to that house. I'd live in it.
And we can even use example numbers too if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that would be really interesting.
Sure.
So if you look at, like, let's say a first-time home, you can buy a home with several bedrooms that you can house hack for even like 400, 500 grand with like several bedrooms.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let's say, for example, this is your first time home, you could do 5% down. Let's say that you're even doing plus closing costs like 30 grand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're hustling, like you said that you are.
And I never did this. This wasn't available for when I was getting into the market, or maybe it was, but I never took advantage of it because I actually owned this real estate when I was still, I living with my mom or whatever, right? I was still in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So
if you're working like as much as you can, even like let's say it's still living at home or whatever it is, and you're able to save up like let's say 30 grand over the course of a couple of years.
That's not that hard.
It's not.
It's really not that fucking hard. If people got their shit together and lived below their means, they stopped buying dumb shit. You don't need Starbucks every fucking day. You don't need Starbucks at all. Like, go fucking buy a coffee machine at home. And like, I don't understand that whole mentality. But anyways, you don't need a nice fancy car. I drove a fucking 1999 Ford Windstar when I was going through this. And I took the back seats out and used it as like a utility van. Yeah. That was my daily driver. You have to be able to make sacrifices if you want to get to the point where I am. It's a necessity. You have to do that. Yeah. You have to like literally put your ego aside. You can't. You know what that was like? I remember going on dates in that fucking van. Like, I'm not joking. You know what that was like? But you know what was the big difference is that the women that I was with on those dates realized that I had something bigger. Yeah. Like it was bigger than me, right? I was chasing something, and they felt that I was after it. That's why it didn't fucking matter that I was driving a 1999 Windstar. It didn't matter. So you have to be able to sacrifice. Anyways, going into the numbers, $30,000 you're saving up. You're buying a home for say $450,000. Maybe you have to pump in, a couple $1,000. Do the renovations yourself, right? You can learn how to do this yourself. I renovated multiple units in that Lagoyo property myself, where I was literally on YouTube learning how to renovate stuff, learning how to change toilets, learning how to paint cabinets, learning how to change flooring out, learning how to fix sinks, learning how to change faucets. I literally did all of that myself. I was able to actually pull out equity, and that's how I got Canadian Protein started. I bought a blender with the equity that I pulled out. So just as simple as that kind of scenario, right? Yeah. So that's where, so going back to the house hacking situation, the reason why I like the house hacking model is you are not going to be paying tax once you sell that property. So you're gonna walk into a property, you're gonna put some lipstick on it. You don't want to get too crazy, right? You're new. Yeah. You want to be able to make sure that you're not like you're not having to take walls down, right? So a lipstick job, okay? Get into that lipstick job, get into that house, live in it for a year, which is I'm pretty sure the allotment that CRA allows you to essentially house hack as your principal residence. So once you sell it after a year, it's capital gains exempt. That's what you want. And then you take that and roll it into another one, And then you might be in a situation where, again, this is all obviously market indicative. This will depend on where the market is. But at the minimum, you're going to be into a house where you can live in, and say, for example, if the market absolutely takes a shit, move the fuck out of the house, move back home, rent the house out, get some income coming in, cover your payments or whatever. Or, obviously if you have a job or whatever, it's a little bit of a different situation where you're arguably not going to get as hurt if you completely over leveraged. So you can weather the storm, That's the type of situation that I like to be in. If I'm completely new, if I don't know what's going on, but you have to get a deal. You cannot get into a situation right now where you're overpaying for a property where that property does not cash flow. You have to get in a property right now. I don't like to be. Right now is a time when I've seen a lot of people take down properties where they're putting 50% down, 60% down. I like utilizing leverage. I don't want to get too crazy. I usually like to, even going 65, 35 right now, loan to value on an income producing property is steep. I like 70, 30 to be honest with you as like a max, but some lenders just won't, provide anything in the 70s right now. But if I'm house hacking, you're going to want to make sure obviously you can service the debt. And you have to build in some risk tolerance for the volatility in the market. So, I would that's what I would do. I would house hack 100%.
And just roll into the next one.
I'd roll it into the next one, or like I mentioned, you might be in a situation where, you could weather the storm because it's your principal residence, right? You might be in that kind of situation. Or, if it's not working out, I would still keep the home, wait for the market to turn. Markets turn all the time. This is something that I think people don't realize, or they need to realize, or they need to hear it, is that, we might see higher interest rates. And when I say higher, I mean, the environment that we're in, higher, comparatively speaking to the 2% that we were getting a couple of years ago. That's higher. But it's not that high yet. In the event they do increase, which I don't necessarily think they will, but some people are calling for double-digit, interest rates. If that happens, it's not going to be forever. So you're going to have to make sure that if that does happen, that you can weather that storm if you are buying property. But another thing that people need to hear is that the opportunity cost of not getting into the market could be significant. You don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. That's why I'm saying, if you want to be a true investor, you need to consider everything that comes across your desk and pull the trigger on a deal. I'm not talking about pulling a trigger on everything. I'm talking about pulling a trigger on a deal. If it papers, if it makes any kind of sense. For example, that hypothetical situation, a 7% cash on cash return, 5-year average, and a 25% average rate of return over say 5 years or whatever the case is. If something like that comes across your desk as a house hacking option, but if you were to rent that property out and that's what it would return, I would still buy that. Because in the event we have some sort of downturn in the market again, more than likely that property will still cover itself in that type of depressed environment. That's why I like to use that. For example, another thing that I do in order to build risk into underwriting or any kind of unforeseen situations. Tomorrow, the feds have an announcement in the States. This is a perfect example. They're claiming that the sentiment is that they're going to be increasing, say 25 basis points, right? Or say even 50. It doesn't matter. Whatever the sentiment is. If the sentiment is 25 basis points, what I do is, if I have to pull the trigger on a deal today, I will build 25, I would increase today's current interest rates by 25 basis points. And if the deal works based off of that unknown increase or hypothetical increase happening tomorrow, I buy the deal. If it doesn't, I walk. If they don't increase the interest rate tomorrow and they accept a deal tonight, well then great. It's just gravy. But if they increase it, I've already built in the risk. Right? That's how I work the deal. You know? And if they don't accept and they pause the interest rates tomorrow, I go back and say, okay, they pause the interest rates. This is what I can do now. That's how I build risk into my underwriting and into these deals. But if you're a house hacker, 7% cash on cash average return over 5 years and 25% annualized rate of return, if a deal comes across your desk or whatever, your computer screen, and it accomplished that, and if you're interested in house hacking, you're new, I would do that deal. I would do that deal right now. And I would do that because it's built in enough risk tolerance in the event there's a further decline in the market.
Yeah.